right, folks, brace yourselves. Grab your favorite beverage. Grab a water, a coffee, whatever you got, because we got a wild story to unravel here. And trust me, it's not just wild. It's going to be full of intrigue, suspense, trial balloons that may indicate just where the winds are blowing as far as Warner Brothers Discovery and a whole lot of other entities out there. We're talking about, of course, CNN, the once giant news network that is now teetering on the brink of an uncertain future. And if rumors are to be believed, it's being marketed for sale. Here we go. Now, look, we all know that CNN has been navigating through some very rough waters. I would call them rapids, to be fair. And you could certainly use an analogy like a roller coaster, at least as far as what the year has been for them, with corporate reshuffles, CEO firings, and of course, a lot of public brouhahas. And can't forget a town hall that I'll mention a little later. And the parent company, of course, is Warner Brothers Discovery, and they're reportedly mulling over the idea of unloading their very troubled child. I heard that right. It's being reported that way. But is it little more than a rumor? I took the weekend to try to suss out what was going on here. You see, I want to add some context, something that a lot of people aren't looking at when they're looking at that kind of a deal overall. And it's the fact that Warner Brothers Discovery is actually looking to unload the music side of their film and television group. That's right, all the audio that goes along with a lot of those famous film and television properties. And normally I would call that another large trial balloon. I mean, again, it wasn't reported widely until very recently, and I thought maybe they were just trying to see if there would be some interest in that. Come to find out, it seems that Sony is a key interested party here, and they're very likely to pull the trigger on the deal. There are some other players, but I fully expect that to happen, and we'll probably hear about it very soon. Hearing that a potential sale sign on CNN, yeah, that's not so far-fetched anymore. But wait, the plot actually thickens here. It does, because the stage for a comeback is actually being set. It's going to bring back the return of Pure Evil, or Pure Evil's prodigal son, the recently ousted CEO, Jeff Zucker, who was given his marching papers after a very hush-hush romance with CNN executive Allison Gollust. And he's being pegged as the potential buyer. Pegged. Grant, maybe we don't use that word.
Seems oddly appropriate.
Can you fix that? Anyway, obviously in this situation, Zucker is using a lot of somebody else's money, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. It sounds kind of like it sounds an awful lot like a Bond villain getting control of an island and then going full bananas on the rest of the world. Interestingly enough, it was the New York Post that was claiming that Zucker is eagerly waiting for this one opportunity. He was trying to take a shot at steering the news organization back to the extremes that he led it to during his initial propaganda-slanted misinformation heydays. And that's a lot of words, but they're 100% true. Look, does anybody remember the guy that was just there, Chris Licht? I mean, the guy that attempted to pull CNN's political compass needle back towards the center and do actual news, and then spectacularly failed? Well, of course, his brief reign came to an unceremonious end earlier this month, as I mentioned before. It's actually no wonder that he was dismissed as quickly as he was, as there were still a considerable number of loyalists inside that building that were just laying in the weeds to feed loads of information to, well, outside news entities such as The Atlantic. And of course, The Atlantic took opportunity to create a profile hit piece that cut CNN's potential off before. With Chris Licht gone, it seems to have actually triggered Zucker's latent desire to return and take control of CNN's helm as the ultimate revenge for his firing. The irony. Actually, you've got to appreciate the audacity, right? I mean, Jeff Zucker, with an estimated net worth of $60 million, might just be looking for a way to rise from the ashes of his, well, very, very burned up past. Especially considering that, reportedly, he holds quite a grudge over his CNN firing, which was triggered by his admission of having an affair with CNN's executive president, Allison Gollust, which I mentioned before. Now, that same affair was, of course, something that was made public during the network's investigation into Chris Cuomo amid accusations of Zucker being overly friendly with Cuomo's brother, the former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. It's almost like watching a political drama or series that's actually mirroring House of Cards or Game of Thrones. Only this is actually playing out in real life. Now, in the middle of all of this, Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav was recently crowned one of the highest paid executives in America. He took over CNN's management post when, obviously, Licht left. Because according to insiders, his future plans are less clear than what's being reported in a lot of locations. And it's more like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube with a blindfold, which could be done, but not by me. One possible outcome, of course, amid this corporate chaos, could see a landmark deal being struck, or maybe many. Now, here's the juiciest part of a conversation. Imagine a merger between CNN and CBS, thanks to ongoing merger negotiations between NBC Universal parent company Comcast and Paramount Global, which is the parent company of CBS. Now, if that mega merger gets pulled through, we could witness Zaslav, CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, creating a media superpower by essentially selling off CNN and allowing for the merger of CNN and CBS. Although the biggest barrier to that would be antitrust. And if you can see the FTC hating on the way Microsoft is trying to acquire Activision Blizzard, well, you know they'll go positively apoplectic.
You are apoplectic
on a deal that combines CNN and CBS. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. One of the supposed industry insiders that was quoted in some of these articles says, I could see a sale in the next year. Once Warner reduces its leverage, it will be more willing to sell non-core assets, including CNN. Maybe so. It's an interesting forecast, but I think you better bring a raincoat anyway. Another take from a media investor this time proposes an alternate strategy, which I kind of agree with. What if CNN got absorbed by a corporation that already owns numerous cable channels? That would be a bit of a masterstroke, right? You'd have a cost-cutting and expansive programming power all wrapped up in a single move. Could Nexstar pull the trigger on something like that? Efficiency and expansion hand in hand. Of course they could. Or maybe somebody else. Now, this still leaves us with a whole lot of buzz and murmur that seem to be pointing towards this potential sale. And I imagine we're going to keep hearing about it. Meanwhile, of course, Jeff Zucker, back to that guy, who's currently steering a big capital investment group called Redbird IMI, is sitting on a giant pile of cash, $1 billion in total capital. He seems to be open to the idea of reclaiming his old throne, but maybe he's not quite chomping at the bit as reported. In fact, an insider recently said, somebody that would know him, that it's not on his agenda, but he would look into and at all media assets, and CNN is not an exception. Rather vague. Of course, all of this speculation is adding more spice into a very turbulent tale of CNN. And again, the network has been riding a very rough set of waves recently. In fact, we're back to the Rapids analogy again. Its profit dipped about $500 million last year, which is dismal in contrast to the previous year, so it's not doing very well. The botched town hall event with former President Donald Trump didn't play very well, and a PR catastrophe was launched out of that for whatever reason. It almost seemed like it was orchestrated to get rid of Chris Licht. And then there's the saga of the longtime anchor that they just parted ways with, Don Lemon. His 17-year stint was a series of blunders recently that painted him as a loose cannon because he was verbally brawling with co-host Caitlin Collins over some off-the-air interruptions, and of course commenting about, well, presidential hopeful Nikki Haley, calling her past her prime, which wasn't a good look. And finally, he was inquiring about another female guest and whether or not she was suffering from mommy brain.
Mommy brain. Ooh.
And of course, that was just the last straw when it comes to the number of anchors that CNN has parted with recently. As a matter of fact, it's been a long line of people that have found their way out the doors, whether or not it was willfully or by firing. But returning to our subject at hand, the real focus of this video, is CNN going to be sold? I think it's more than a little bit possible. But what do you think? Is Zucker likely to swoop in like a leftist white knight and save the day for everybody who likes that kind of propaganda? Will CNN find itself as part of a much larger blockbuster merger? I think that one's more likely than not. Or are we going to witness a surprise turn of events like a sudden alien invasion?
An alien invasion?
Of course, that last one was just for fun. Right, Grant?
That's what she said.
Look, I want to have this conversation down below in the comments section. So if you have any thoughts on whether or not CNN is on its way to a different iteration in the near future, let me know. Because until there's some forward movement or we get more news reports about some specific players, I think we're just going to have to wait till some of these events unfold. Is it likely that this will happen? In my opinion, yes. How? I don't know. Maybe you have some insight. And with that, as a reminder, just go ahead and hit the like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and share this video out there because, hey, we're growing, and it's all because of you, and I thank you. Be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, wash your hands, of course, because it's good hygiene, and until next time, bye.